Let's talk about something fascinating, a real paradox happening inside your head, the relationship between stress and your memory. We all have this idea that stress makes us forget things, right? But what if I told you that sometimes stress is the very thing that burns a memory into your brain forever? It's a total double-edged sword, and we're going to figure out how it works.
All right, let's start with a scene that I'm sure is painfully familiar to a lot of us. You're in the middle of a huge test. You're staring at a question and you know the answer. You can almost feel it, it's right there on the tip of your tongue, but you just can't grab it. Your mind is just static, a total blank. So what on earth is happening in that moment? Well, it all comes down to a really complicated dance between stress and memory. To really get how stress can mess with us, we first need a super quick look at how memories are even built. Think of it like a three-act play constantly running inside your brain.
So, Act 1 is acquisition. That's just the moment you encounter something new, like a fact or an experience. Act 2 is consolidation. This is where your brain works behind the scenes to store that information, to make it stick. And finally, Act 3, retrieval. This is the big performance, when you need to pull that information back out onto the stage.
And you've got three main actors in this play. Your hippocampus is like the brain's librarian, carefully filing away memories. The amygdala is the emotional highlighter. It flags experiences with a big, "This is important" sticker. And your prefrontal cortex, that's the director, shouting action when it's time to retrieve a memory. Okay, so here's where things get really wild. Stress isn't just the villain in our story, nope. Depending on when it shows up, it can be your memory's best friend or its absolute worst enemy. So get this, it's the crucial point. A short burst of stress does two completely opposite things. It actually improves the storage, the consolidation part of a memory. But, and this is a huge but, it seriously gets in the way of your ability to retrieve a memory that's already in there. So what's happening on a chemical level? Well, when you get stressed, your brain gets hit with a flood of hormones called corticosteroids. You've probably heard of the main one, cortisol. This chemical cocktail basically screams at your brain, hey, pay attention. This is important. Store this memory now. It flips a switch, putting your brain into what you could call consolidation mode. But it's a really delicate balance. Some fascinating studies on rats showed this perfectly. A moderate amount of stress hormones actually made their memory better. But when that dose got too high, their performance just tanked. It's kind of like a Goldilocks situation. A little stress helps you focus, but too much is a disaster. And this really just brings the whole paradox home. It is all about timing. If you feel stressed after you learn something, that cortisol rush helps lock the memory in tight. But if you're stressed right before you need to remember something, like during that big test, it slams the door shut. Your mind goes blank. Now, so far, we've been talking about short-term acute stress. But what happens when the stress doesn't just come and go? What about the kind of chronic, long-term stress that so many of us deal with? This is pretty mind-blowing, and not in a good way. Chronic stress physically reshapes your brain. The connections in your memory and recall centers, the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, they actually shrink, they wither away. Meanwhile, the connections in your fear and habit centers get stronger and bigger. You end up with a brain that's wired for fear and anxiety, not for clear thinking, which is linked to memory issues and conditions like PTSD. The idea that stress can physically change our brain is unsettling enough, but it leads to an even bigger, kind of scary question. If our emotions can literally reshape our brain, how much can we really trust the memories stored inside it? Seriously, think about that for a second. If an internal feeling like stress can warp your ability to remember things, how reliable is memory in the first place? Could we be tricked into remembering things that never even happened? The answer, as wild as it sounds, is a definite yes. It's a well-known phenomenon called false memory. It's when you remember something that just didn't happen, or you remember it completely differently from how it really went down. And trust me, it's way more common than you think. This brings us to the super weird Mandela effect, where huge groups of people all share the same false memory. For instance, do you remember the Berenstein Bears books being spelled with an E-I-N at the end? Millions of people do. What about the Monopoly Man? Did he have a monocle? Spoiler alert, he never did. And maybe the most famous one of all, Darth Vader never said, "Luke, I am your father." He said, "No, I am your father." Our minds can collectively invent these memories. Okay, so we've seen how stress can mess with our memory and how our minds can even play tricks on us. It sounds a little bleak, I know, but here's the good news. You are not powerless here. There are actual, science-backed ways to take control. First up, train for the stress. If you've got a big presentation or a test coming up, practice under similar, slightly stressful conditions. Do practice questions with a timer, rehearse your speech in the room where you'll be giving it. When you make the stressful situation feel familiar, it loses its power to freak you out. Tip number 2, move your body. We usually think of exercise as being for our bodies, right? But it is one of the most powerful things you can do for your brain. Getting regular physical activity helps keep those stress hormones in check and reduces anxiety, basically making your mind tougher when it matters most. When you feel that panic starting to rise, just breathe. I know it sounds almost too simple, but taking slow, deep breaths is like a physiological hack. It literally flips the switch on your fight or flight response, calms your whole nervous system down, and can pull you right out of that mind blank spiral. Now, this next one is huge, and it might actually be the most powerful of them all. Practice self-compassion. So often, the biggest source of our stress is that nasty critic inside our own head. This isn't about being lazy or letting yourself off the hook. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness you'd give a good friend, accepting that you're human instead of beating yourself up for it. I absolutely love this quote from the research. Self-compassion trumps self-esteem. Think about it. Self-esteem is often about comparing yourself to others, which is just a recipe for anxiety. Self-compassion is about accepting yourself, warts and all, and that creates this incredible buffer against stress and negative thoughts. And finally, let's not forget the fundamentals. The choices you make every single day are your brain's first line of defense. Things like having a hobby, eating well, and especially getting enough sleep, these aren't luxuries. They are non-negotiable, essential practices for managing stress and keeping your brain ready to learn and remember. At the end of the day, it's so clear that our memory isn't some perfect video recording of the past. It's a living, breathing story that's shaped by our emotions, our stress, and our own thoughts. So the real question isn't just what you remember, but how will you choose to shape the story you're telling yourself?